Imagine what would happen if you suddenly disappeared from the sight of those around you. This isn't about physical disappearance, but rather a kind of disconnection, a release from the invisible threads that bind you to other people. Have you ever considered the consequences of such a decision, to step aside not out of anger or resentment, but out of a deep need for solitude and introspection? Many don't realize how powerful, even disturbing, the effect of distance can be. Stepping out of your usual orbit seems to disrupt the fragile balance in their world. And it's not just a simple longing for your presence, it's something deeper and darker, touching the most sensitive chords of the soul. When you decide to withdraw, you leave behind a void, and a void, as we know, causes discomfort. Not so much because of what is missing, but because of what it reveals. And here's what's especially important to understand: the pain of your absence arises not from who you were to these people, but from the fact that they can no longer project onto you. Don't be mistaken in believing that people see you as you really are. No, they see in you a reflection of what they need you to be. You become a kind of mirror, reflecting their own complexes, hidden desires, and unspoken expectations. And when you decide to leave, they are left not so much with a hole in the place of your figure, but face to face with the broken reflection that you once held before them. Consider how often each of us has heard assurances of our own significance, indispensability, and exceptional importance to those around us. However, if you look more closely, doesn't it feel like these words reflect the speaker's needs more than a real assessment of the individual? When a person decides to withdraw, to distance themselves from their usual social circle, they seem to break the mirror of illusions, forcing others to experience an inexplicable sense of discomfort. This may be anger, guilt, fear, but above all, a question they are afraid to ask themselves: what will remain of me if this person is not around? Isn't it disturbing to realize that someone's dependence on you is dictated not by love or sincere affection, but by the fact that you serve as a support, helping to avoid confronting your own internal problems? Unfortunately, this is the harsh reality that underlies many human relationships. We act as mirrors, reflecting other people's strengths and weaknesses, but sometimes we also become crutches, allowing them not to face life's difficulties head-on. When a person decides to let go, to step aside, they force others to lose their balance, to face the truth they have stubbornly ignored. Their emotional dependence was directed not at the real person, but at the image they created, at a kind of idealized projection. And that's where the main question arises: what do they really feel when this person is no longer around? Someone will say, sadness, someone, disappointment, and someone, perhaps, will even be filled with resentment. But the truth is that they themselves do not know the answer, since the void that has formed after the departure of a significant person does not have a clear shape. It's not pain that can be localized, not a wound that can be healed. It's something deeper, more primal, an echo of what they have always tried not to notice. When someone decides to leave their life, a real drama unfolds in the depths of these people's souls. What dark sides of the personality come out when you decide to leave? And why does this seemingly simple act of distancing cause such a powerful storm of emotions? What makes their souls tremble? As soon as you withdraw, an amazing process begins. Those around you begin to reshape the history of your relationships. But this is no longer a story about who you really are, but rather about the role you played in their lives. And, most importantly, about what they lose with your departure. They seem to be trying to fill the resulting void with fictional images that have little to do with your real personality. An absentee analysis of your person begins, a search for hidden motives, attempts to explain your decision. They look for patterns in your actions, interpret every word and gesture. However, the trick is that the true goal of these studies is not to understand you, but to justify themselves. Your departure forces them to face an uncomfortable truth, a question they have been carefully avoiding: how much did my emotional stability depend on this person? And this question for many turns out to be an unbearable burden. In their desire to appear strong, independent, and self-sufficient, they are forced to admit something deeply human, but at the same time extremely unpleasant: they depended on you much more than they were willing to admit. And so, a strange metamorphosis unfolds in perception. Those around begin to re-evaluate the image of the departed person. This happens not because of his personal changes, but because of an inner need to create an acceptable version of his departure for themselves. Some elevate him to the rank of an ideal, as if absence gives him greater value than he had in life. Others, on the contrary, demonize him, convincing themselves of the selfishness or even betrayal of his actions. Deep down, it is easier for them to blame the departed than to admit that his decision disrupted their peace of mind. Interestingly, these emotions manifest unevenly. Everyone reacts differently, depending on the role that person played in their life. For some, his absence is a wound that never heals; for others, it is a wound that they thought had healed, but has reopened because of his distance. And for a few, it is a mirror reflecting their greatest fear, being left alone with themselves. This is where the real complexity lies, not only in how others react, but in how those reactions transform over time. At first, there may be anger or confusion, but over time, the absence becomes more abstract. People begin to doubt whether they really knew this person or simply projected their desires and expectations onto him. This doubt can consume them, because his departure is not just a physical absence, but a symbolic change in a dynamic they did not control. And the loss of control always causes anxiety and discomfort. Paradoxically, people often do not realize the true reason for their painful reaction to someone's departure. Perhaps this person did not play such a significant role in their consciousness, did not occupy an important place. However, his disappearance clearly demonstrates the opposite, exposing hidden corners of the soul that they preferred not to notice. It is as if a suddenly extinguished light highlights cracks in their emotional foundation. And the feelings they experience are related not so much to the departed as to what the resulting distance forces them to confront. In this context, departure becomes a kind of stress test for the relationships left behind. Often, it reveals an unpleasant truth: many human connections are built not on unconditional love and mutual respect, but on convenience, power dynamics, and unspoken needs. And when someone decides to destroy this established system, those around lose not only a person, but also a support, a point of reference, a balance that he unwittingly helped to maintain. In this regard, a question arises that many try to avoid: what will remain of them when this person is no longer around? For some, the answer is obvious: they will continue their journey, find new connections, and adapt their lives to the changed circumstances. However, for others, the departure leaves a gaping void that they do not know how to fill. After all, the presence of this person unwittingly became an anchor for something much bigger, for something that begins to crumble without him. It is quite fascinating to observe how the experience of leaving a relationship affects both sides. After all, not only do loved ones feel the bitterness of loss, but the initiator of the break also faces the consequences of his choice, although this is a topic for a separate conversation. Now, it is worth focusing on the feelings and thoughts that take hold of people who have faced the departure of a loved one. And believe me, the impact of this event is much deeper than it seems at first glance. By deciding to break up, a person not only triggers a series of changes in someone else's life, but also becomes a catalyst for a whole range of emotions that the other side did not even suspect existed. Paradoxically, departure is like a quiet rumble of thunder. At first it seems harmless, but soon it makes the earth tremble under your feet. And even if people don't say it out loud, even if they don't admit it to themselves, some kind of internal process is triggered inside them, which they are unable to stop. The first reaction is most often denial. Loved ones convince themselves that nothing terrible has happened, that this is only a temporary separation, that everything will definitely return to normal. They desperately cling to this thought, trying not to notice the warning signs. But deep down, a worm of doubt begins to gnaw at them. They understand that something has changed forever. And this uncertainty, this agonizing why, without an answer, becomes that seed of doubt that slowly but surely sprouts in their minds. Did they do something wrong? Were they too demanding? Did they fail to appreciate it in time? These questions swarm in their heads, creating anxiety and self-doubt. But here's what's even more fascinating: the very fact of your departure forces those around you to take a new look at their self. After all, when we share time with someone, our life forces, our presence are invisibly intertwined, forming a single whole. We become part of their story, even if it's not always obvious. And when you disappear from their lives, they lose not just a person they were close to, but a part of themselves, the personality that was formed in your presence. Restoring the lost self is no easy task. Suddenly, they have to redefine who they are now, without you. And in this process, something almost beautiful is born. They begin to remember you, but not as you were in reality, but as they need to see you. Each person creates their own image that fits into their personal history, corresponds to their experiences, and helps them understand why you are no longer around. Some idealize the departed. He was so perfect, so necessary, and I failed to appreciate it. Others, on the contrary, demonize. He left because he never cared about me. And only a few, the bravest, dare to face the truth. Perhaps I never understood what he really needed. At this very moment, the tension reaches its peak. While people are waging an internal struggle with overwhelming feelings, an outside observer turns into a person shrouded in mystery. Questions swirl in their minds. What is he doing? What is he thinking about? Is he nostalgic? And this shaky uncertainty is like a loosely attached thread that you desperately want to pull. But the real concern is not the lack of answers, but the loss of control over the situation. After all, the departure has disrupted the usual order of things, and broken patterns always create chaos and unpredictability. And here is the paradox: while those left behind are trying to rebuild their world without the presence of the departed, he himself is going through a similar process of internal transformation. After all, the decision to leave is not a simple action. It is not only establishing physical or emotional distance, but also showing considerable courage. It is the ability to look in the mirror and say, I need personal space, even if those around me do not understand my choice. And this step, despite its necessity, can be associated with mental anguish. Here it is worth pausing and reflecting. If the reader has reached this point, then the topics touched upon probably resonate in his soul. Perhaps he himself once made a decision to leave, or felt his world collapsing because of a similar decision made by another person. Regardless of the specific situation, it is worth asking yourself, how much does the inner world depend on external influence, and how ready is a person to let go of the past in order to find peace of mind? The phrase, emptiness does not define me, it liberates me, resonates deeply. It reflects the idea that departure, despite the possible pain, can become a catalyst for growth for others. Detachment, paradoxically, can open up the prospect of independent movement forward, giving a person the opportunity to unlock their potential. And although the realization of this does not come immediately, such a step can be a valuable gift, contributing to self-determination and development.